Good morning, friends. Um, well, I shouldn't say morning. I guess I should say afternoon since it's 1 o'clock. I actually made it here on time. Kudos. Um, One thing you'll probably notice right away is that the video looks much better because I went and bought a webcam that's not the one built into my computer. So, a little better picture. So, with that combined with the microphone, this should make this a lot nicer. So let's talk about the question that I ended yesterday's live stream with. So the question was um, cliffhanger endings. Do you like them? Do you hate them? I only got one response, not a lot of traffic. So the one response was pretty typical of how I feel. Really, cliffhanger endings have their place, and it does make the reader, hungry for more, and that's why they're used. It does inform the reader that there's something else coming. It's not the end. Sometimes it's nice though to surprise people by like, oh, you thought it was the end, but surprise, it's not. And that's kind of how book two ends. Is it has that final ending, but there are still plenty of like empty strands and stuff that were left dangling in books one and two that I can pick up in book three. So I like cliffhanger endings. I do try to end each chapter with like a mini cliffhanger whenever possible, because the whole goal is to keep people reading. So, if anyone's curious about the record is held by another author, very gifted lady. Uh, for some reason, I'm blanking on her name right now, but she wanted me to read her book and she would read mine, kind of swap reviews. So her book was great. It was She does a lot of like adult erotic retellings of classic fairy tales and stuff. Um, so interesting things. But she read my book. Let me see. She said she ordered in pizza and read it cover to cover with no real breaks in between in about 24 hours. That's insane, by the way, but hugely flattering. I really appreciated that. So, I mean, that's the goal of any author is to keep people wanting to read, um, keeping that pace, keeping people interested. It's a difficult thing to attain, especially when you're trying to build a world. So, book one, I never felt like book one was slow, but I have heard from a few people that in the beginning it is a little bit slow. Oh, hi, Joanne. Thank you for joining me. So, I didn't really think it was slow, but there is a lot of information. So I tried to kind of like parcel it out a little bit more. Um, I didn't want to just like be like, here's my world, these are my vampires, bam, and go. So you get to know what their kind is like over the course of the books, different things. And definitely one thing I didn't want to do is um, really kind of zero in and center on an origin story. Um, I feel that sometimes people spend too much time figuring out where vampires came from and not enough time just imagining how they're living in our world. Once I'm hooked in a book, won't stop reading until finished, like Blood Lily. Aw. Yeah, I mean, I'm the same way. Honestly, if a book catches my attention, I'm off and running, and I sneak chances to read every chance I get. Um, Usually, when I'm writing, I don't read much. So I haven't finished a book in quite a while, unless it's nonfiction. Nonfiction books I will, but I don't want another author's writing to influence my voice. So I don't often read when I'm writing, which is pretty much all the time. So I don't read much anymore, except like I said, nonfiction, research books, things of that nature. I do read a lot of like crime scene investigation and stuff like that. I have some audiobooks I was listening to when I worked home health and I was driving all day long. I just bought audiobooks on crime scene investigation and stuff and listened to them in the car. So it's pretty cool. Um, so the main message I wanted to talk today about, because I think this would be constructive, not just for fans, but for people that are interested in writing, but just don't know where to start. So I wanted to broach the subject of the writing formula. Now on Twitter, there's a great community called the Writing Community. It's like hashtag Writing Community. And one of the cool things is that it's a whole bunch of authors that pose questions to each other, and they have debates about different things. And one of the ones that I had seen was like, how do you write your books? Do you plot everything out and then write, or do you just go with it and run? So I think for me, the perfect balance is both. I do generally plot out like, this is going to lead to this, to this, to this. Big broad strokes. Then I get in and write. And I adjust those big broad strokes as I write because, as I said yesterday, my characters have a very strong sense of self, and sometimes their voice just takes the book to different places. So originally with Blood Lily, I was planning on like the attack in the basement being mostly like, which is in the beginning of the book, by the way. That attack in the basement down in Madisonville, that was going to be the climax of the book. It was going to get to there, and you're going to find out about Chance's tattoo, and then there was going to be a final fight, and it was done. But when I got there, it was so early in the book, and it, the characters took me in a different direction. And this book evolved into something way more complex than I plotted out originally. And it's the same thing with book two as well. Like I plotted certain things out, but it went beyond what I had first imagined. And so a lot of times these books, I sit down and I make like a very generic kind of like beginning, middle, end type of outline. And, I'll have like different scenes that I want in there. Like, I want a scene in this place. I want a scene in this place. And then I'll kind of just start writing. I just start writing and I use that as a guideline. And then as I'm writing, maybe it takes me somewhere else. So maybe I expand on something or have a whole new scene. So then I sit there and I adjust my outline going forward. So because this happened, now this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. So it's very organic and constantly changing. So it's not super structured. And I felt that that was important for me to have something that sounded natural, because I tend to write the way that I speak. And that was part of my problem with Blood Lily, because when I had that English professor read the book, and she pointed out all the grammar errors and how to use a comma, which is extremely embarrassing, that I had no idea how to properly use a comma, because I use commas as pauses. And when I talk, I pause at certain places in a sentence, and that's not necessarily like grammatically correct for where a comma should be. So I've learned a lot about writing by using AutoCrit and really combing through the book and tightening things up. Something cool that happened to me today that I feel like I should mention is one of my biggest fans and supporters, Mr. Kelly Wolf, who works at Best Buy. I went to Best Buy to buy my camera today and saw him for the first time in, I don't a year and a half, maybe even 2 years. I'm not sure. It's been a while. So I got to catch up with him, and it was really cool. And then him and another friend of mine, Rachel Thomas, who both worked at Best Buy together at one point. She's moved on to much bigger and better things. And I do hear she's moving back to the area, so that'll be really cool. But the two of them were just, they would fight over who was my biggest fan. And it was adorable. It was adorable. Kelly usually won the arguments because he got the books first. So, And one time they argued with me, and they're like, we should be villains in your next book because they're such close friends. They're like twins. She's like, you should make evil twins, and that should be your next book. So in honor of Kelly Wolf and Miss Rachel Thomas, there are those characters named Kelly Wolf and Rachel Thomas, are both characters that are going to be in book 3. So I got to tell him that today, and he was pretty excited. It's very cool. So, I'm I'm excited for the plot line. It's going to be really awesome and build and make things so much bigger than they already were in book one and two. Um, book one and two is very localized, mostly. I mean, mostly, especially book one, because it's centered around Lilith and her family, and a few people that are on like her outer perimeter that are affected by what happens. Book two is it expands a little bit the world, a little bit includes Cohen and his family, and how they affect some other people. Book three is going to take things to a whole new level, though, as far as the reach, and it's going to be pretty exciting. Um, so that's pretty much how I write. I write my books. I generally outline things, and then I go in and I just start writing and fill in gaps and things like that. Um, there are a few times when I will just write and then I get to a point and I'm like so far away from where I wanted to be that I have to pause and take a moment and backtrack and think if that really should be the progression. Um, there was a couple deleted scenes from Blood Lily. Well, one from Blood Lily, one from Rose of Jericho. I think it's deleted in Rose of Jericho. It's been a while since I've read that one. But in Blood Lily, at one point they go to the scientist Dr. Nichols. They go to his apartment, um, and it felt like reaching at that point, and it just muddied things up. It slowed the pace. I didn't like it, so I just skipped that crap. Pardon my language. I skipped that stuff and went right to them meeting him at the lab when Ashcroft and his sidekick show up. I don't want to give too many spoilers, so I'm going to try and limit how many names I use for certain characters. Um, so I was going to ask my question of the day today. So my question of the day is, what is your favorite childhood book? So I read to my son a lot. And now he reads to me mostly. Caden, he's 6 now, which is ridiculous. So he really loves and enjoys reading. So I always read to him when he was a baby too. But my favorite book, even from my childhood, and my favorite one to read to him, is Where the Wild Things Are. Favorite book, hands down. Book 1 and 2 as I gave mine to my daughter to read. Oh, well, when you can get the brand new copies when they come out. I'm sad to say that my Blood Lily shelf, which is behind me here on my little thing, is deplete of copies of Blood Lily. I should say my writing shelf because it's not just Blood Lily. Rose of Jericho's up there. I have like 3 copies of Rose of Jericho left from the Indie Gypsy printing, but I don't have any Blood Lily left. They're all gone. I do have a couple of the originals, like the very first self-published book, which is kind of cool. It would be a neat collector's item at some point, and if it was worth anything. Oh, I know. He has grown into be such a cutie. Caden is adorable. It's just ridiculous how cute that kid is. The other day he asked for a snack, and I was like, well, only if you give me the cutest face possible. He dropped down on the floor. He's like this with the cutest little face. I was like, okay, yeah, you win. Yeah, he's a little pleasure. He's awesome. Um, so yeah, my stock is a little depleted. I did have a couple new coworkers at work that asked about my books, and I brought the last 3 sets that I had, complete sets that I had left, into work for them. So, nice. But hopefully I'll be wrapped up with Blood Lily pretty soon. As far as the edits go, I'll be able to self-publish again. Chris Howard is working on my covers, as always, because he's awesome. It's not going to change much for Blood Lily or Rose of Jericho, because I absolutely love those covers. I don't want to change them. But we're going to modify them just enough to show that they're different. We were talking about doing like a red border around the front cover for one. Oh, I know. When they release, you will know it. Trust me, you will know it because I'll probably be on here announcing it. I did get some editing done last night, which was pretty, it was nice. Usually in the evenings, I don't get to work much because I'm busy hanging out with my awesome fiance and my best friends that live 2 doors down. But he was in the mood to just lay down and watch baseball last night, which, unless the Phillies are playing, I really could care less about baseball. Um, no, honest opinion. Football's another story. I'll watch any football game, especially if it's a team that I hate, because I want to see them lose. Which there's only really two teams that, well, now three teams that I would I would love to see lose every single time. So, so I want you guys to think about the question of the day, which is your favorite childhood book. I'm going to try and do another live stream tomorrow. Then I am working for the weekend, so I will not be on here for the weekend. And I'll probably be back on Monday. If you guys think of any like writing questions, if there's any people out there that are looking to write a story and you have a question about, well, anything really, um, feel free to leave me a message and I can discuss it on my next live stream. I do have, like I said, I have a bunch of topics that I can talk about. I liked the writing formula one. I thought that was pretty cool. Um, but I have a bunch of different interview questions that I can discuss. So I'm not going to run out of ideas right away. But I definitely appreciate like any input and questions, and especially about writing in general. Um, because if my experiences can help someone else out there and motivate them to succeed, then I think that's amazing. I'm very much into teaching. I love teaching. Um, Hopefully one day I'll just be like a teaching nurse, maybe. Because Lord knows my feet can't take 12-hour shifts like they used to. So, you guys can hit me up with your questions, your comments. Leave me the name of your favorite book. If you want to discuss a little bit why, that's awesome. I loved Where the Wild Things Are because of the artwork. Um, the artwork was so different and really cool, and the techniques were neat too, and the story was great. I loved the story about this kid who's rude and acts up and stuff, and then he goes to a place where he can do whatever he wants, and he realizes that some of those rules are important. Um, so he comes back with a much better appreciation for the people around him and what they do for him. So it's a lesson that a lot of people could learn, especially right now in this COVID and political climate. Um, Take a moment to think about people around you and how your words and your actions affect them, because we need to be nicer to each other. Like in general, I try to teach that to my sons all the time, because they fight. They're boys. They fight. You know, it's what they do. But if we can all be a little nicer to each other and work together and think about others, then we can actually make an impact and get through this without um, complete insanity. So let's all do our part. And like I said, leave me a comment about your favorite childhood book. If you want to go into like teenage years and stuff, that's cool too. When I was just talking about this the other night actually. When I was a teenager, I wanted to read Stephen King because he was big and popular when I was younger. But I had kind of a weak stomach at the time, believe it or not. At one point, I did not handle violence well. I know that's hard to believe considering my books, but true. So I picked the smallest Stephen King book I could find, which was Cycle of the Werewolf. And one chapter into that book, I was so grossed out I couldn't read the rest of it. So never actually read Stephen King, which maybe now as an adult I'll go back and read. But I did get into Piers Anthony. He was really big in the 70s and 80s. He actually is the author that wrote the book that Total Recall was based on, the original Total Recall with Arnold Schwarzenegger, like the one that matters. Um, he wrote a series called Xanth, and it was just filled with pun humor and dragons and wizards and stuff, and it was hilarious. So I devoured those books like they were in no time at all. I think I read like all of his 13 books that had been released at that time in one summer. So that got me reading. That was the thing that really pushed it into devouring books. Um, and then I picked up Obsidian Butterfly by Laurel Hamilton. Loved the book, and then realized that it was, book like 8 or 9 in a series. Went back and read the ones before that, and they were all amazing. After that, I kind of lost interest, and went in directions that I wasn't really interested in at that time. But the earlier books were just stellar. They're a lot of fun, sassy attitudes. I'm all about sarcastic humor. So I'm gonna wrap it up now. I keep rambling, but favorite childhood book. Get back to me. And tomorrow I'll come on and I'm going to talk about music, actually. So I'll be discussing music and what roles it played in my books. So hit me up, send me a message, and I will see you guys tomorrow.